That's so beautiful, that melody.
Yeah.
Medley, I should say. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so excited for today's service because one of the things we're going to go into a little deeper on Christmas Eve together on Zoom is the whole story of the birth of Jesus and how he came on this planet Earth to show us a beautiful example of how we actually could be, how we could be. And I think one of the most significant verses that has been used as a controversial point of contention need not be, okay? So I'm just going to read to you from John 4:16. John 4:16. Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, I love this verse. I absolutely love this verse. And it's been used to say there's only one way. And Jesus even said it. But let's delve just a little bit deeper into this verse. Jesus said, his beautiful life example, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. We believe this. We just don't limit the way God shows up. We don't limit the way Jesus shows up. We don't limit the way God shows up. And because God, in a very foreign country who doesn't have a gathering or a teaching of the way, the truth, and the life, we believe that God reveals himself in nature. God reveals himself through other names, through other languages. Could be Buddha, could be the universal intelligence. It's the same energy source that as unity, we don't get nitpicky in the way God shows up. We're very familiar with the way Jesus shows up saying, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. It's all true. It's all wonderful, and it's all God. It's all God. Now, one of the most beautiful, exquisite videos that Greg and I had an opportunity to witness was Eckhart Tolle was asked by an audience member, do you ever lose it? Do you ever just forget about presence and just react? Like somebody cutting you off in traffic, calling you a slow driver, calling you a bad driver, calling you names, or whatever it is. Do you ever just lose it? And he said, you know, in certain circumstances like that, no, I really, really don't. However, he said that he is not void of emotion, that when he witnesses a human being hurting another human being or an animal being hurt, there's a sadness, there's a weeping, even a crying. There's an emotion that's attached to certain things that he allows himself the expression of. But losing it, no. Now, he said that there's nobody who knows you best than the people that you work with day in and day out. And he says, I suppose you would have to ask them. And especially if there's a task at hand, or if there's a time crunch for something to get done, to get finished. Now he says, there is a degree of presence that comes through at more times than others. And he says he experiences it, that whenever he is summoned to help someone in a one-on-one invitation, he allows the presence to become so strong that Eckhart Tolle disappears. And he likens it to when we are truly connected with Source, we are just the frame. We're just the frame. And depending on how connected we are with our Source, to God, the way, the truth, and the life, depends on how much light comes through this window. 100%, he gives the credit to Source. Eckhart Tolle's personality is just the frame, that he takes no credit for the presence of God that comes through him. That's where we praise God.
And he said that took years. You know, he had this awakening, like, oh my gosh, there's this, and it happened when these words went through his head. He says, you know, I hate my life. And he was like, wait a minute, there's an I, and then there's a my. There's two things going on. And he was the observer watching himself hating his life. And he said that separation, where he got to see himself as the observer, is where it started for him, that he really started having a whole new experience of life. Like, wow, I could just be the observer. And he said for a long time, he had this awareness that there was something amazing and beautiful there, but his personality was still hanging on. And his personality was still latent and reacting and causing problems.
Well, he thought that his significance came from his intelligence. So he continued on to his PhD because that's where he got kudos, until he realized he didn't need that for what God was calling him for. He didn't need his PhD. He didn't need the accomplishment. There was nothing more he needed to add to what God was calling him to do. So that was the part of him that he kept having to continually let go of. And he says, now when there is a task at hand, what he does feel is the low hum in the background of presence. So when he's called to speak before a group, and this is what we do when we gather together, we prepare our hearts to be less and less of us so that God can show up and come through. So when you no longer see Greg and I up here, or when you no longer see a teacher and there's something that's coming through, that is our goal, is that we disappear and that God's presence is so powerfully felt that we have blessed everyone in the presence of God showing up. And therefore, there is no credit that we justifiably in any way can take credit for. That the glory of God is only vividly present and healing us because of our surrender, because of us letting go and letting God show up. This is what I experienced when Portia and I were doing this Buddha meditation, and there was no sound, but there was a summoning of the presence of God to do the healing. Now, when he was before someone, and there was a nun that had come to see him, because she was so disillusioned after 15 years that she said she could not find God. So she came to see Eckhart. So in those moments, what Eckhart did was he summons the presence of God in that one moment. And I've experienced this many times as a psychotherapist. I'm telling you, it was not me. It was a solicitation for the presence of God to heal them, only using me as an instrument. And I could feel the intensity of my listening was so acute. And what was happening was he would deepen so deep in the presence of God that this nun said, you're doing it. You're doing that thing. You're actually healing me. You're a healer. And he goes, oh, I'm a healer. See, and that's part of his personality, thinking he was actually doing something. But guys, we're not. We're not doing any of it. We are only, the extent that God is powerful in our lives is to the extent of our surrender to the way, the truth, and the life. And Jesus was the perfect example. Come to us as a babe at this Christmas time, growing up as a young man, telling us in Scripture, this is the way. Oh, which reminds me of Baby Yoda. This is the way, right?
You know,
Myth.
and there's, it's a shift from this is happening to us and from us. So it's like, all right, if I bless someone, that's something I did. It's a shift from that mentality to this is happening for us and through us. So instead of to me and from me, it's happening for me and through me. And it's just a subtle shift. But, it's like I had a beautiful conversation with Jerry. Jerry loves asking real critical questions, about, and really, direct about, like what, if you say, because I often say things, well, hey, God has a plan. And the plan God has is happening beautifully with or without us. It's been going on for, millions, billions of years. And so Jerry says, Greg, you say this thing, God has a plan, and it makes me feel a little bit like, there's like, I don't have freedom of choice, or there's some controlling authority out there or something. And I said, Jerry, the thing that I've used, and this has served me, and you guys really play with this, the thing that I've used to understand, like, how do you see through the eyes of God? When God is this infinite, this is not some gray-haired old guy in the antiseptic corner of the universe wearing a white robe, right? There's a presence that we see through our eyes. And sometimes, as they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You get to see through a real beautiful presence. And the one thing that's helped me really get centered in what that's about, as far as, our Father, is parenting. So as a parent, if you have a 2-year-old, are you in control? Do you have a plan for your 2-year-old's life? And if you're a parent, you have a 2-year-old, you do. You have a plan for your 2-year-old's life. And you're very much in control. And both you and the 2-year-old know that. When they're 10, you still have a plan for their life. And there's probably more resistance from them, but you're still determined to have your plan for their life and roll out. When they're 15, you can still have a plan for their life, but they're going to let you know that they have no interest in your plan for their life. And when they're 20, you start to dispense with your plan for their life. Now, I asked Jerry, he's got, son that's 40, and I said, you have a plan for your son's life? He said, no, I do not. He really doesn't anymore. When he was 2, though, he did, right? So I love when I say God has a plan. I know that there's a beautiful underlying force of love that is functioning in this universe. Trees grow. How? Flowers bloom with amazing colors. Bees go get honey. How? How is all this happening? It's because there's a plan. And if you don't believe there's a plan, just watching National Geographic. There's the most bizarre, like orchids that will trap a bee, glue its pores on the back of the bee. The bee flies and holds it for a few minutes while the glue dries. Then the bee flies away into the female version of the orchid, and as it climbs in to get the nectar, there's 2 little hooks that take the pore off, and it fertilizes the flower, right? Now, I doubt that was a flower and a bee making a deal. There is a plan to all of this. There's a plan to life and death. Any parent would want their child to go through difficult times. And when we quote scripture like, I am the way, right? We want to know the way. And this is, you got to get that the complexity of the plan is not something a human brain is ever going to understand. It's far more infinite, far more complex. It's nice to know that there is a way that you can choose to follow, but understanding it from the perspective of it makes me chuckle when I hear somebody say, let me tell you what God is and what he isn't. Like going, how arrogant that we're going to, like there's a top of a pyramid and you're going to zoom above it look down on it from the outside, and then describe it. It's just hilarious to imagine that a human being could comprehend the plan. What we get to do is we get to experience it. We get to choose to love bigger around it. We get to see who we want to be in the face of it. And not so much. I'm always amazed at how I react. Tamara talks about how, like Eckhart talks about how he would cry when he would see things happen. Imagine being able to weep and not say, this is bad. To being able to weep and say, God, you made it so I can feel compassion. And when people are suffering, I can feel that sadness. How beautiful is that? Instead of being in resistance to what's happening as if it's wrong or right.
And this was the caveat to Eckhart really surrendering to this, was the voice he heard in his head when he had his enlightenment was resist nothing. Resist nothing.
And just digest that for a second. What would your life be like? Just explore, take a minute. If for the next week you resisted nothing. Nothing happening in the news or politics, nothing happening with your family, nothing happening with your health, with your finances, with the world. What if you just resisted nothing? What would be left?
Now, one of the things that for many years Eckhart said he would feel is his old familiar ego pulling at him, saying, come on, Eckhart, suffer. Remember the suffering. Life is crap. Everybody's going to hell in a handbasket, and he would feel the pull of the familiar negative spiral. And he would take it like a buffet that he no longer wanted to partake, because he knew he had a choice. He did not have to continue the pull of going in that downward spiral of suffering. It didn't mean he didn't feel pain, but he didn't have to go in that swirl of that downward spiral of living in that space.
Because that spiral of suffering comes with a whole bunch of really great, you get the right to blame, you get the right to tell people off, you get the right to
Be a victim.
to go be a victim and go get medication or go get drunk or go get whatever. I mean, when that suffering comes with an invitation, if you indulge it, it's not leading to a good place ever. So pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And the only difference is resistance. Pain's going to happen. And I remember once I was in the monastery and I had sprained my ankle. The monks would play basketball. And because it was a pretty controlled environment, we would play very intense basketball. And I came down, twisted my ankle, and it was sprained pretty bad. And one of the monks was an ex-German doctor. He was a doctor from Germany, MD. And here I am with my, purple ankle all swelling up. Just happened an hour or so ago. And he walks in and he says, oh, with a very stiff German accent. And he says, so let's put ice on this. And I was going, wow, plops the ice on there and he's rubbing it around, hard ice. And I am like writhing in pain while it's freezing my ankle, right, to reduce the swelling. And I'm like, my leg is shaking because it's so painful. And I laid there for a second and I said, all right, wait a minute. I couldn't hold my body still because of all the pain. And I sat there and I just was in the habit of trying to see things through the eyes of whatever, God, Jesus. And I said, all right, let me imagine this. Having my arms spread out wide, someone driving stakes through my wrists, right? And through my feet, and then propping me upright. And as I did that, and I was just laying there, I was just like trying to really embrace what that must have been like. And there's something that came over me that was like, it was all, I wasn't anticipating. It was like a thank you. Thank you for trying to understand me. Now, I've always felt a very close presence of Jesus since I was 4 years old. I had a powerful experience with the flu. I prayed to Jesus that it lifted, and I've always felt that presence with me my whole life. But there was something about this. It was weird. This is not what I would imagine Jesus would want to feel close to me through, is that. But the pain lifted from my body. There was a blessing, and it wasn't because I was willing to be crucified like I said. It was just willing to be close. And I love Christmas because there's so many reminders like that we can just be aware of. Just be so grateful that at a time when there was nothing going on in the world except you're going to be punished and they're going to hold grudges, and there was literally like no such thing as forgiveness in the world before Jesus came. And he came with that message. And then there was like, you mean we can actually, for no reason, just let people off the hook and free ourselves from having to be the jailer and hold a grudge and remind ourselves of our suffering and go through this whole, it was like, what a miracle to be told you're forgiven. And it was a bizarre experience that I did, like the pain lifted, not because I was, touched and healed. It was just because I was willing to embrace it. There was pain, but there was no suffering. So, when Tamara and I were listening to this, it was funny because Tamara was getting completely different messages from this little, this little 12-minute video of Eckhart Tolle. I was just enjoying the context of a person that could talk about himself without being important, without having to be important. Just realizing, there's something going on out there that's so beautiful, even though it may be completely contrary to everything that I was anticipating for today. And this is Christmas. There is so much beautiful stuff going on that, Tamara and I, we love watching. You go to YouTube, just say, a beautiful Christmas story, or amazing Christmas connection, or Animal Friends, or, whatever it is, just something that is on your heart to be inspired by.
And to resist nothing. Resist nothing. That's exquisite. That's exquisite. So thank you guys so much. We want to open it up and see what may have come up for you from today's lesson on the way, the truth, and the life, and how we don't limit the way God shows up. We don't limit the way he speaks to our heart.
Jerry, did you want to share? Microphone there? Grab the microphone if you don't mind, so everybody can hear you. Cool.
I'm back to the water fast. Sorry about. I must have been on one, but when my hair thin, it never came back. But I've been thinking a lot about what you said about Christmas being better. And I don't know. I haven't. I love Christmas. I love the time with the family, and having gone back to Illinois and Indiana and visiting all my family a couple weeks ago, it's great. That's wonderful. And Tamara mentioned her grandmother, and I go back to my mother had 9 siblings. And so all of them were married. So, there's 20, and then there were 34 grandkids. And we were all at my grandmother's house.
Yes.
For Christmas and Thanksgiving and so forth. And so I look at those times, and I'm saying, well, I've got this small family, and it's still a family gathering, but is it better? That was absolutely wonderful. That was just fantastic. And of course, I can't get beyond. Those for whom Christmas is perhaps the worst one.
Mhm.
And I think of that. So, you know, it's going to be a great Christmas for me, but I still think about how others may look at it.
Thank you for your compassion, Jerry. That's beautiful.
It's
Appreciate that. Edward?
beautiful. Anything came up for you, Bradley?
That's a really good point, Jerry. Hi, this is Portia.
Oh,
Okay.
Portia, hold on.
Are you opening it to people on Zoom or?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sure, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Okay, well, since I was thinking about what Tamara was saying about resistance. And I remember the first service that I attended of Unity at on Bernard. And you put your hand out and said, whatever you resist, persist.
Right.
Oh, Tim was here, he's getting lunch. He just walked out. And the other part about the resistance had to do with acceptance. I've been thinking about these words that we use, like joy or love. And for me, unconditional, absolute acceptance is part of love. And so I just want to share that. And something else that you asked about, how does God show up? You know, I listen to the Zoom in a room that I do my meditation. It's very quiet. I won't disturb anyone else. But Tim had to use this room for something else that he was Zooming. And so I had to go into our dining room. And I listened to Unity. This was a few weeks ago. And as I was sitting there, and maybe I shared this before, and is that I saw reflection of the lights against our mirror and seeing the leaves and so forth on the outside. And I felt this absolute presence was in our dining room, was in this place. And that's how God showed up. So thank you. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Portia.
Thank you, Portia.
Merry Christmas. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ed. Mr. Edward's going to be sharing with us now.
All right.
Mhm.
Resist nothing. I tried yesterday, and I failed. I resisted absolutely nothing, even though I was stuck at the end of the day, and the extra dessert and more. So yeah, I'm learning from you guys, not resisting anything at all in there. But you know, I like, there was a lot of really interesting points that people have made today. Jerry made something, you know, really obvious about the folks that are probably there are a lot of suffering, you know. And you don't find any time of year special. Specifically this one. There has been, always has been, a lot of work going on somewhat behind the scenes for us to have good moments, for everybody to have good moments. And it is unfortunate that some don't get to see or feel the good moments. But there's, I'll just use a basic rounding out of evolution to get to where we are now, and into this unbelievable place of where we can have peace and comfort and understanding that there was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a whole lot of struggle that went in to allowing us to have this beautiful time and time of the year. Specific suffering.
A lot of people made sacrifices.
Huge, huge,
Yeah.
and continue to. And finding appreciation for that is quite important. And you know, when I see that, I have to look at that's not going to stop. That's going to continue on. There's going to be more struggle. There's going to be more standing up for, more fighting for, to continue to have the blessings that we've been given that we do have to pass on.
And the fact that we get to experience it all is the blessing, not the outcome. The outcome is dismal, no matter how you swing it for each human being, right? I mean, it ends in death and it's probably going to be painful, but my God, that we can feel such a spectrum of emotion, and including pain, because without that you couldn't feel pleasure, including compassion for the people out there. You know, we have, Bert has a persimmon tree at his grandmother's, and it puts out, I swear, 20 big bags. One tree is so generous, and I keep them in my car, and I love handing out, you know, like at every stoplight, you know, it's here's a whole bunch of persimmons for you, because it's not like, it's not ceremonial at all. It just came from the tree, and it's from God, and it goes out the window. So it's those little things, I think, maybe not saving the world, but being able to experience those little bits of compassion. And thank you for the reminder, Jerry. There are a lot of people experiencing way more loss this Christmas than ever before. It's good to keep in mind.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Edward. Who would like, Dylan, did you want to share?
I exercise determination, but I resist something.
Exercise determination, but resist nothing.
I mean, I'm still trying to lose a little bit more weight, 10 pounds left, and so I have to. I mean, even though I have villages and streets, I'm still on my way.
Mm-hmm.
So this time of the year can be difficult. And I was telling my daughter here that, you know, this time of the year is when people gain weight, right? And now we have COVID. So do they gain my story?
Wow, it's true.
Maybe.
It's just the thing that really stood out most for me was what you said about crying, about just being able to feel. I actually had an appointment years ago with and I was telling the counselor, you know, I embrace crying as just a form of relief. And she was trying to say, well, maybe you should try a different way of relieving. And I mean, I piano really helps because I mean, not actually the other point is that after I play certain songs and I make up, I just kind of exist and nothing else matters. Kind of that Christ presence, but the ability to kind of shift mentally from the idea of crying being bad, idea of crying being good, that took me forever. I remember 3 years ago I was in an appointment, and I remember verbally saying, I was taught that emotions are bad, that you shouldn't feel. And that kind of messed with my head, and I think that's part of why I'm the person I am today. It's because of just that, not just mental and emotional, but moral shift, really. And so
It's like, don't enjoy God's gift.
yeah, and I mean, now that I'm in a position again, like I said, this past month is just greatest month of my life, and just being able to play music better than I ever have, and finally getting back in that has been really fun.
So you're experiencing it without the resistance.
Yeah,
is really the difference.
Beautiful.
Have we heard you play Imagine here? Sure. Have you played it and sang it?
I think the last time I played it was when you were still at Stars.
Mm-hmm.
So I intend to play it sometime.
Okay,
Well,
good.
That would be awesome.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan.
So,
And Share or Mickey?
Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Mickey.
First, I want to say that I'm sure Mickey's sorry she couldn't be here. And I'll just share something quick from her from the last service. You know, she had her knee replaced, been 3 months ago, and it's recovered nicely. And she told me that the entire operating room was packed with angels and they were crowding at the door trying to get in.
Wow.
So that reminds me how many angels there are out there. And I know she meant to share that and didn't get a chance, so I'll just pass that along. For me, the message I get today is there's always an opportunity to look at things differently. And I know that I've resisted listening to the media. In fact, at Greg's suggestion and with Greg's permission. But I'm a little nervous now that it might be a good time to listen to the media again, if I can do it in a certain way. I've got several of my good friends that are buying guns and ammunition and preparing for a civil war about a month from now. And they're taking it very seriously. And I don't own a gun, and I can't really take that idea very seriously. But it might be a good time to maybe listen to the news and just take God's perspective, not my own or not the journalist or whoever's on the news. So that's one thing for sure. And then briefly, I'll share the second thing, because I was proud to have my cowboy hat on my Christmas tree. And somebody brought up that maybe I was from Texas. And here's what it brought up for me. I grew up south of the Grapevine. And we knew about Bakersfield, but we considered anyone who lived here to be either a cowboy or a low rider. And that's the only people living in Bakersfield. So after being here for 15 years, I decided to sell the house, take my wife, move up to the mountains where we wouldn't have to live in Bakersfield. And that didn't work out. I mean, I thought God wanted me to be a handyman, and apparently I was wrong. So when she moved back here, against my will, I agreed to move back with her. And the grandkids were here, and now we're here with the whole family. And I'm finally proud to live here, and I can admit that. So it's a completely different way to look at it. And so that's just what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. And a little advice for anyone that is looking at Civil War. My best preparation, one of my favorite movies for modeling who do I want to be in the face of a Civil War is Hacksaw Ridge. And if you haven't seen it, watch Hacksaw Ridge. If you want a model for how you can be loving in the face and in the presence of guns. It's unbelievable. So thank you, Jerry.
No,
Cheryl, I'm sorry, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Cheryl, you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning. I truly appreciate Tamara with the passage that you spoke about in your message this morning. It really gave me some thought. I've always kind of challenged that verse, but didn't really know why I was doing it. Anyway, I appreciate the message this morning. And also I was thinking about in terms of Christmas and the passage that I've been bringing up for a little while now, Proverbs 19. And it kind of goes with this to me, that many are the plans in a man's heart, and we all have our plans, but it's the Lord's purpose that will prevail. And I'm choosing to believe that the Lord's purpose in allowing this to continue is to get more of his children to slow down, calm down, and get priorities truly in order and what's important. And and it's taken me all of this time to really come to that. And I'm not going to say conclusion because it's not, but to come to that thought. And anyway, I just wanted to express that.
Thank
That's
you,
so
Cheryl.
beautiful, Cheryl.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Judy, Tracine.
And then Dad.
I just want to say Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank
Merry
you, Tracy.
Christmas,
Thank you,
Judy.
Merry Christmas.
And Tracy, did you want to add anything?
All right, off the Padre.
Okay, Dad, what came up for you?
Well, I've been listening to the whole program, and the thing is, it goes without saying that there's so much food for thought, and everybody's expression of what they feel or what they heard and what is going on in everybody's life. And I just love listening to it every Sunday. Love you guys.
Oh, love you, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you all for
good
sharing.
deal.
Appreciate
Thanks
it
for
so much.
sharing. Okay, so our offertory blessing is that divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. Okay, our peace on Dylan. Let there be peace on earth.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all around. Let us one with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Beautiful. Our prayer of protection is the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Wherever God is, all is well. And we'll see you guys on Christmas Eve from 5 to 6 right here on Zoom. And we're just so blessed with our Unity family. We love you guys. And Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
All right, we're checking out.
Okay, and there we go.